All right, welcome back to our programming class, Engineering 1003, Computer Programming using Python. This is Engineer Jelby Lagos, and today we will discuss the input function. But before that, before we are going to review our previous topic in operators. When you say operators, these are the operations used in arithmetic. Okay, let's try to print. Okay, let's try to add two numbers here. Let's say 3 plus 4. Okay. Say 3 plus 4 plus 4. Okay. The result would be, okay, it's obvious that is the result will be 7. Now take note, the two numbers here are integers. Now if I'm going to change one number, I will change that to float. What will be the result? What will be the result if we are going to add the float plus an integer? So the result will always be a floating number. So that's how you use floating numbers. Now, if I'm going to subtract, let's say I will subtract 4 to 10. So we will subtract 4 to 10. So the result will be, it is obvious that the result is 6. Now let's try to change 4 to a floating number. Okay, erase and then run the code. Okay, the result will be 6.0. Now let's try to increase the size of the font here so that it is viewable even in your cell phones. All right, now let's try one more operations. This time, we will be using multiplication. Let's say I want to multiply an integer 3 to an integer 4. And of course, the result should be 12. That's an integer. Now, if I'm going to use a floating number multiplied by an integer, the result will always be a floating number, which is 12.0. Take note of that. All right, now let's try to, this time we are going to divide. Let's say I want to divide 10 by 5. Now, division by default, the result should be a floating number. So division by default, the result is a floating number. Okay, that's how you do division. Let's try another one here. Let's say 2 raised 2. This is the power. So I want to raise 2 to the power of 5. So this is 2 raised to 5. You can say that as 2 raised to 5 and run the code. The result will be an integer. But if you are going to change this to a float, let's say 2.0 raised to 5, the result would be a floating number. Let's say 2.1. Let's say 2.5 raised to 5. So 2.5 raised to 5 will result to a floating number. So that is the case now when you operate an integer to a floating number. The result will always be a floating number. Okay, now what about if we want to know the quotient? Let's say if I have here 25 and I will divide it by 4, what will be the quotient? So let's run it. All right, the quotient is equal to 6 because 6 times 4 is 24 plus 1. 1 here is the remainder. So that becomes 25. Now this is the quotient. And what if I want to know what is the remainder after dividing 25 by 4? So in this case, we will use the modulo division. So modulo division will result in the remainder if you divide 25 by 4. Okay, now this is 1. 1 here is the remainder. All right, now that is the operators. Now, I have here a famous or a viral arithmetic problem, order of operation. By the way, now before that, now we need to discuss the order of operation. So if I have here 3 minus 4 times 4, okay, and then I will add 5, what will be the result? Take note, the order of operation follows PEMDAS. Okay, take note, PEMDAS, parentheses first, then exponent. You can use multiplication or division. So this can be interchanged, or addition and subtraction. This can also be interchanged. So in this case, now we are going to do multiplication first. So if we will multiply negative 4 by 4, the result will be negative 16. Negative 16 plus 3, okay, will become negative 13. Plus 5, that will become negative 8. So now if we are going to print this one, the result will be negative 8. Now, here comes the famous problem. So that went viral on YouTube and Facebook. Let's have 8 divided by 2 times 2 plus 2. Okay, let's multiply this. So in this case, now, since this is a multiplication, since this is a multiple operation, we can actually use PEMDAS here. So the order of operation is parentheses first. Okay, parentheses first. And take note, multiplication and division can be interchanged, whichever comes first. In this case, it will be division comes first. Now, you have to read this from left to your right. So in this case, from my left, I have here 8 divided by 2, that's 4. And from the operations inside the parentheses is 2 plus 2, that's 4. 4 times 4 is 16. So the result here should be 16. So this is the famous, okay, viral problem on YouTube and Facebook. I'll try to search on this. There are lots of explanation. In the newer rule in mathematics, the result is 16, but the older version or older rule in mathematics, the result is just 1. And 1 is an obsolete rule. So in this case, now, the new rule, the result will be 16. Right? That is for the operators, the order of operation, or what we call the priorities. Now we will discuss what are variables. Okay. What are variables? Variables are actually just like a box. You can put any values in the box. So variable can take string, it can take float, it can take a Boolean value, it can also take an integer value, okay, and so on. All right, now let's try this one. Variables. What do we need to remember on choosing a variable? Take note, variable is case sensitive. When you say case sensitive, x, no, let's say x equals 3, is not the same as x equals 5 because they are case sensitive. Okay? When I say x, the lowercase x, the value is 3, and the uppercase x, which has the value of 5. Now, if I'm going to print the value of x and x, the result will be, obviously, it's 8. Okay? Now, if I'm going to change the uppercase x by a lowercase x, since they are not equal, now the result would be 3 plus 3. That will be 6. Okay, that's 6. That's how you use your variable. Take note, if your variable, if you're using variable, take note that that is a case sensitive. Like, for example, if I want my variable like name, that's my variable. Let's say my name is Jelby. Okay. So Jelby here is a string, so I enclose that with a quotation. And I have here another variable which the first letter is a lowercase n. Let's say my name is, oh, Guapo, Jelby Guapo. Wow. Now if I'm going to add the two, let's print name. Name. Okay, what will be printed here? So it will print, okay, my name, which is Jelby. But if I'm going to change, the uppercase to a lowercase n, what will be printed here? All right, so it will print Guapo. Okay, now since your teacher is also Guapo, I can say, okay, let's print name. Okay, name plus name. So when we say plus, what does it mean? It merges the two strings. Let's try. Okay, print name. Okay, Jelby Guapo. Wow, what a nice name. All right, that's how variables are used. So it is case sensitive. So are you sensitive? Okay. Now, variable also starts with a character. Always starts with a character. What do you mean by a character? It means the variable will not start by a number. Okay, when you say character, that is A, B, C, D, E, F, G, and so on. So, a number is not a character. Take note of that. So you cannot say 1. So, butanda, 1 number, or you say first number. So you cannot do that. Let's say first number is 2. Okay, second number is 3. Okay, let's say second number is 3. And then you can say print. Okay, first number. Okay, let's say first number plus second number. Okay, which will give you an invalid syntax. Why? Because variable should start with a character. So a number here is not a character, so you have to delete this and place it here. So let's say number 1, number 2. So of course, if you have this variable number 1, the variable here should also be changed. Let's say this is number 1 and this is number 2. All right, now let's clear this console first and then run the code. Now it will give you the value of 5 because number 1 is 2, number 2 is 3. So if you add them together, the result will be 5. So that's how you use the variable. Of course, another thing is, if you are going to use, okay, my number, this is my number 1 value, number 1, number 2, with a space. Okay. So a variable does not have a space. Okay, don't forget this one. Does not have a space. You cannot use a variable with a space. Like for example, num1 equals to num2 equals 3. The result will be beta. Okay, the result will be syntax error because of the space here. Now, if you want, instead of using the space, why not use the underscore? Underscore. Take note, underscore is a variable. And of course, you are going to change this one up. Okay, let's change this one to num2. So now, if you are going to print this one, the result will be 5. Of course, you cannot use space. And what else? A variable does not, you cannot use, let's say, you can't use a reserved keyword. Yes, of course. You cannot use a reserved keyword as a variable. Like for example, I want to use this variable true. True is not a reserved keyword, so you can definitely use this one. Let's say true is equals to 1. We've done this before. And then false is equals to 0. Of course, you can do this. Let's say when we say print, okay, print true is greater than false. Okay, the result will be true. Okay, because 1 is greater than 0. That's the value of true and false. Now, take note, these are not reserved words. Now, if I'm going to change T to the uppercase T, take note of the change of color. The color changes from white to red. The same is true with false. Changes to white to red. Now, if that's the case, if the color changes, meaning to say the words are reserved. So you cannot use it. They are reserved. Okay? Like for example, if I want to use import. Okay, take note, import is the color changes from white to yellow. So import is also a reserved word. Now, if you want to use this one, you can change the first character. Let's say I will use capital uppercase I in this case. Then you can use this import. You cannot also use as, okay, and, okay, or. Okay, you cannot use all of that keywords. So all keywords can be seen in your module. Try to read your module. Okay, and of course, no, all of these are comments. If you can still recall, when we say comment, it starts with a number sign. We call this your number sign, or nowadays, the common term for this is hash. So hash. Okay. All right, now I think now we will proceed with the shortcuts. I hope you understand how variable works. Now we proceed to shortcuts. So, I will make this easier to understand for you. Now, like for example, I want to have x as 1. Let's say my initial value for x is equal to 1. Then I will increment x by 1. So we call this one x is equals to x plus 1. So initially the value of x is 1. In the next line, x here is equal to 1. Added by 1, the new value of x will become 2. X here is actually incremented by 1. When you say increment, the default is you add 1. So decrement, decrease by 1, unless you specify the value. Let's say incremented by 10, so meaning you will add 10 to the previous value of the variable you want to increment. Okay, now, let's say we will print the value of x here. So let's say print the value of x. Okay. I will clear this console first. Okay. Okay, let's move this here. So the value is equal to 2 because initially x is equal to 1. In the next line, x becomes x plus 1. So 1 plus 1 is equal to 2. That's the new value of x. Take note, what will be printed here is the latest value of x. Okay, take note, the latest value of x. All right. Now, let's try to create another code, in this case, a shortcut. Take note, this can be rewritten using the shortcut. So the shortcut here is you have to write first the operator, which is plus, followed by equal, followed by a number, 1. So this x plus equal 1 means the same to x equals x plus 1. So I will remove it here and make this a comment. So this will become my comment. So they mean the same. They are just the same. Okay. This x plus equal to 1 is just a shortcut of x equals to x plus 1. Now, if we will run the code, the result will always be equal to 2. Okay. Now, that's how you use the shortcut. Okay, now let's erase this part first, and then let's change the value. Let's say 10. And I will multiply, instead of adding, let's say, let's decrease it by 4. So decrement by 4. That's the term. So if we will print the output, what will be your guess? Okay, 6. That's the output. Because initially x is 10. Here, 10 minus 4 is 6. No? It's also stored to x. The new value of x is 6. Now, we will create a shortcut here by changing this to a comment. So the shortcut is x followed by the operator followed by equal sign followed by 4. Let's try. Okay, the result will still be 6. All right, that's how you use shortcut. Let's try for multiplication. Okay, I will make this as a comment. Now this time I will multiply by, let's say, 2. I will multiply by 2. So if I run the code, what will be the result? Of course, you guessed it, it's 20. So run, the result will be equal to 20. Now, if we will use a shortcut code, no, we need to know what is the operation. In this case, the operation is multiplication. So you have to do multiplication equals 4, meaning to say this is just the same, or not 4, but 2. Okay. This is just the same as x equals to x times 2. And I will not clear the console so we can compare the result. So the result will be the same as the previous result. All right. Now, what about division? So can we do division here? Let's try. Let's say I have here 50, okay, as the value of my x. So 50, I will make this as a comment first. Okay, now let's clear this up and then run the code. You will have the value of 25.0. Take note, division. The division results to a floating number. Okay. All right, now let's go back. Now let's change this one to a comment and let's create a shortcut here. So the operation here is division, so we need to insert division here before your equal sign. So again, now we will compare the result. Okay, run the code, and there you go. It's the same with the previous result. That's 25. Okay, that's how shortcut works. Any question about shortcuts? No? Okay, let's try another one. This will be the last one. Let's say I want to raise the value of x. I will make this as a comment. I'm going to raise x to the power of 2. Okay, the value is 2. Initially, when 2 is raised to the power, or let's try 5. When 5 is raised to the power of 2, that will be 25. I will erase this part first and then run the code. Oh yes, it's 25. Now, let's have a shortcut here. Okay, take note, the operation is power, so we need to change this to power. Let's try, no? Run the code. There we go. It's 25. Okay, it's the same. So meaning to say, no, you can change the longer code to a much shorter code using shortcuts. Shortcuts will be used more often if we will be dealing with loops like while loop and then for loop. Now, that will be discussed on our succeeding modules. All right, now we will proceed with the print function. Oh, not the print function, but the input function. Okay. Okay, I will make this as comment. Take note, comment, no? You use the number sign for your comment before the string. So we will discuss now the input function. What is this input function? Input function lets you interact with the computer, meaning to say the computer will, if the computer will ask you to enter or to input a value, so the user will input the value using the keyboard and then press the enter key. Now that's how the input function works. That is how computers and users interacts. Okay, now let's try this one. Let's have my first number here. Now let's label my first number as number 1. And I'm going to read inputs from the keyboard. Let's say enter. Okay, let's create a situation here. So here is the scenario. Okay. The user will add 2 numbers, okay, entered from the keyboard, and displays the sum. All right, so this is the scenario. The user will add 2 numbers entered from the keyboard, not from the keyboard, and displays the sum. So in this case, no, my first code is to assign a variable to my first number. So in this case, I will use num1, no, as my first number, or you can say first number. Okay, first number. And you can do that. So let's say enter the first number. Okay, enter the first number. I will use this. Enter the first number or input. Now take note of the input function. So input, enter the first number. So I can have here the second number, okay, as my new variable. Okay, second number, let's say I will copy this one, paste it here, and then let's change this to second number. All right, so input, no, enter the second number. So what are we going to do next? Because we are going to display the sum. So we need to create an equation that solves the sum. So in this case, now I will use my variable sum, to add the 2 numbers. So how are we going to do that? Sum is equals to what? Yes, it is equals to the first number, plus that is added to the second number. Take note of the variable second. Okay. The variable here should be the same as the variable here. Otherwise, it will create a syntax error. All right, now we have the value for sum. And we need to print that value by putting print sum. All right, print sum. And then let's try to run the code. The first line will prompt you to enter the first number. Let's say I will enter 5, press enter. The second line will prompt you to enter the second number. Let's say 10, press enter. Oh no, what happened here? So take note, take note, the sum actually, the numbers actually merges. But why? Because by default, input accepts string as a value. Take note of that. It accepts string for input. So that string value should be first converted to an integer or floating number. So we need to insert another function here. And that function is int. Okay, I will insert int, open parentheses, and I will close here, parentheses, another int, open parentheses, and I will close it here. What's the purpose of int? Int here will convert your string you have entered from the keyboard to an integer. Take note, if you will use integer, use int. If you will use float, if you are going to input floating numbers, then use float. Let's try. Let's rerun the code again. Okay. We have done this before, no? The merging of two strings in our previous laboratory lecture videos. Okay, now let's try to run again. Okay, this time now you will be prompted to enter the first number and then the second number, which is 10, and then yes, charan, it becomes 15 because the first number you have entered, no, is a string, and it converts the string using the int function, no, to an integer, no, using the int function. The same is true with our second number. Now, after the int function, the numbers are now integers, and the third code will add those numbers and then print the sum. Okay, that's for the first and the second number. Take note of that. That's the default, no? Input function, the default for that, no, will be the string value. So you need to convert that string value into an integer value. What if I'm going to use a floating number as my input? So I will use float. Let's say I want to input 5.1. Let's say I want to add numbers. Let's say 5.1 will be added to 10.5, and then the result would be 15.6 because I use float. But if I'm going to use int here and I will input a floating number, let's say enter the first number, let's say 5.1, it will create an error. Why? Because you have entered a different number type. So it should be integer. So if you know how the nature of that number, let's say if you know that the numbers should be a floating number, you need to use float. Okay? If you know that the numbers should be integer, then use integer. So to be safe, just use a floating number. Okay, to be safe, you can use float. So, okay, let's say I will use float, but I will input an integer. Let's say I will input 5 and I will input 10. That will be good as if you use an integer. So it will not create a problem. So by the best practice, use float. All right. Now we go to problem solving. Problem, okay, let's say real world problem solving. Real world problem solving using Python. All right. Okay, Oyton. What is Oyton? This is Python. Okay. Now let's create a problem here. I have a rectangular lot. Measures 10 meters by 20 meters. Okay. Calculate. Let's say calculate the. Okay, we'll use another comment here. We are going to calculate the area and the perimeter. Perimeter. Oh, yes. Now, in Python, you have to create. So here, now create a program, Python program that allows the user to input the length, okay, and the width of the rectangle and displays and prints instead of display and prints the area and the perimeter. Right. So here is our situation or our scenario. This is our first real-world problem solving using Python. So I will read the problem. A rectangular lot measures 10 meters by 20 meters. Okay. Calculate. Here we are going to calculate the area and the perimeter. Okay. So in this case, now we are going to create a Python program that allows the user to input the length and the width of the rectangular lot and prints the area and perimeter. All right. So how are we going to do this? How are we going to do this? Okay. Let's start by reading inputs from the user. So in this case, I will be using the variable length. Let's say L for length. So I will convert the input to an integer. So in this case, I will just be using float. But if I know that the numbers that I will be entered here are integers, then I can use integers. In this case, we will be using float. Like, for example, input, okay? Enter the length. Okay. So you can say enter the length. Okay. I will copy this one. Control C, Control V. Okay. I will change this to W, which means width. So width. Okay. Enter input width. So now, question is, how are we going to calculate the area of the rectangle? Do you know what the area of the rectangle? Do you know the formula for the area of the rectangle? Of course, that is just length multiplied by the width. How about the perimeter? Let's say I will use P for my perimeter. Do you know the formula for the perimeter? You should know this, no? Perimeter is actually the sum of all the sides of the rectangle. So if the sides have 2 length and 2 width, so definitely the formula becomes 2 times length. You can say 2 times length plus 2 times the width. Oh, what is this? Okay, that's the perimeter and that's the area. Now we know how to solve the area and the perimeter. And the next thing we should do is to display them or to print them. So we need to print the area. Let's say the area is, okay, you can have, what do you call this? A comma and A. So it stands for the area. So it will print the area is A. The area is A. Okay, let's say print, okay, the perimeter is, okay, comma, P. So perimeter stands for P. Now let's run the code. First, you have to check for errors. To easily check that, run it so that you can easily know if there are errors in your code. So in this case, you will be prompted to enter the length. So run the code, enter the length. In this case, the length is 10. So I have 10 here. Okay. Width. How come my length is, okay. I entered the wrong values, but still, no. Let's try again. Okay, take note the size is 10 by 20, so your length is 20 and the width is 10. So again, run the code. The length is 20 and the width is 10. So, and the area, if you can see, the area is 200 and the perimeter is 60. It is displayed here. So that's how you solve problems using Python. Okay, let's have another one. Let's modify the problem here. Let's modify the problem. Okay, I will modify the problem. The same rectangular lot measures 10 by 20 meters. Calculate the area. So in this case, we will calculate the length of the diagonal. Okay. You know what is a diagonal? So diagonal, the length of the diagonal of the rectangular lot is actually the line, no, from the corner, from its corner going to the opposite corner. So that's the diagonal, the length of the diagonal. So you are going to create a Python program and prints the length of the diagonal. Okay, so we can stick with this one, or we can say, okay, let's change the variable here. Okay, let's create let's just create a new code here. Okay, I will just erase this part first. Okay, okay, let's have a new variable. Let's say I will have a variable length. So you can say, let's say float. Okay, and then input, and then okay, enter the length, and you can say that. Okay, I will just copy this one, Control C, Control V. Instead of blank, I will just use the width of the triangle of the rectangle, and then I will change this one, enter the width. By the way, how do you solve for the diagonal of the rectangle? If you can imagine, the diagonal of the rectangle, no, is drawn from one corner up to the opposite corner. Now, try to imagine that now and figure out that there is a right triangle. Actually, two right triangles. Okay, so right triangles uses Pythagorean theorem. So what is Pythagorean theorem? C squared equals a squared plus b squared. But we don't have a, b, and c here as our variable. And how do we solve for c here? To solve for c, we need to take the square root of, let's say, square root of a squared plus b squared. So this is how you write your comment. Okay, take note. Okay, we don't have a, b, and c here, and we cannot just create the square root using Python. We have a term for that. So using Python programming, the diagonal, let's label this as the diagonal that stands for your c, okay, is equal to square root. And we know that square root is this function raised to 1/2. Okay, that's the square root. So inside the square root, you have a squared. What is a? Let's say a is length. Okay, raised to the power of 2. That's it. Plus, we have the width raised to the power of 2. So this is the representation of c equals to the square root of a squared plus b squared. So now we have the formula for the diagonal, and the next thing that we will do is to print the length of the diagonal. So you can say the length of the diagonal is, comma, diagonal. So this is the length of the diagonal is whatever the result of the diagonal here. Okay, let's try to run the code. Okay, erase the console first. We will run the code. Run the code. Okay, enter the length. That's 20. Enter the width. That's 10. And here comes your diagonal. The length of the diagonal is 22.36. All right. That's how you solve problems, real-world problems using Python. Now, in your laboratory, you are going to do this. Okay? I want you to study more about how to create equations, because you cannot solve the problem without knowing how to solve the problems using the equations. So always go back to your mathematics, discover what the equations are, and then use Python programming to interpret the result. All right. So I guess this is for all for today. I hope you've learned a lot on this lesson. The input function. Okay. This will be the end of our module 2. Okay. All right. So for more videos, try to subscribe to my channel. You have there videos of calculus. You can actually request if you want a calculus video, limits, derivatives. applications, no, just comment on my video. All right, I will stop this recording and see you on your next class.